This is Stuart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers. We know gun confiscation happened in Katrina. In fact, that's one of the reasons I started Oath Keepers, was because of that atrocious example. However, I knew also from my prior experience as a paratrooper, there are people of honor and integrity in the military who would not do such things. But until now, we did not have evidence of that happening during Katrina. But I present to you an interview with Sergeant Joshua May, Utah National Guard, who did stand down and did refuse. In fact, his entire unit refused. I'm here with Joshua May, and Joshua and I just met today. We're up here, Sheriff Mack and I were up here last night in Logan, Utah, giving a speech, and we heard about Sergeant May, and you're now a staff sergeant?
Correct.
Okay. And he's in the National Guard here in Utah, and we heard about his story. In Katrina, we didn't realize this, but there were people who refused to participate in any gun confiscation, and Sergeant May was one of them. And so go ahead and tell us your story.
Well, when we got to Katrina, we were actually down in the southwestern part of the state, down in more of a rural area. And there, of course, were rumors and things that martial law was in effect and that we were maybe going to be part of gun confiscation, firearms confiscation.
And you were in an intelligence unit at the time?
We were in an intelligence unit at the time, and we were just going down to pull security is what we heard at first, and help out our brothers and sisters down there.
Right.
And
you were stationed in a more rural part of Louisiana?
We were in a rural part of Louisiana, down the southwestern area. The little town called Erath is where we did our security.
Right.
And so there were some rumors, and a group of us had gotten together, a group of my buddies in the military, and we had talked about whether or not this was the right thing to do, and we came to the consensus that no, we will not be taking firearms. And so when we got there, because I was the loudmouth of the group, they asked me to go and talk to the commander, which I did, and I just explained to him that there's a group of us that we won't do that. He told us at that time that that's not happening here, don't worry about it. Then we won't be doing that. And in that area, we didn't have any problems.
Right. Now, in fact, you had some interaction with local folks who were taking care of their own security, correct?
I did, yeah. It was interesting. The first night we got there, it ran into these folks. They were meeting on the front lawn of one of the homes. And when we came up the first time, they were really standoffish, and it took a few days and maybe a week to get them to actually open up to us. And what they were actually doing is they would meet and say one of their neighbors was having stuff pilfered or taken away from the place because, fridges are big items on the FEMA credit card. They were taking the fridges away to either sell them or put them on their front lawn so they got more money. So these guys were going around and providing security at their neighbors' houses. And when we first came up, they were standing on the front lawn, and some of them were armed, and they thought we were there to take away their weapons because they had heard the rumors that martial law was in effect and we were going to take them. It took us several days to convince them that's not why we were there.
Right.
Once we convinced them, they actually started giving us a lot of intel saying this is what's happening around town. And it became a really good working relationship there.
They were standing there with shotguns and rifles?
Oh, sure, yeah. Shotguns, hunting rifles.
How many guys were there on the lawn?
20 to 30.
So half the town?
Half the town, probably. Yeah, it was a really small town. It was a third to half the town, probably, of the adult males.
And you guys were pulling, what were you doing exactly, pulling security?
We were helping. We had a static guard that watched over the water and MREs that were being handed out during the day. At nighttime when everyone was, the curfew started at 10 p.m., so we had to have somebody there to watch that so it didn't walk away. And then the police department there asked us to also have a roving guard just to help them keep eyes on, because their night shift, there was only one officer on duty. Right. So we had a radio and we'd just tell them, hey, we saw this car coming your way.
And that's when you pulled up to these guys?
That's when we pulled up, was on our roving guard. Me and my buddy that I was with, we pulled up on them, and it was tense the first few times we did that. And they would move around to different people's houses, but it was always before curfew, and they were always off the street by curfew. They just decided, these are the houses we're going to watch tonight. Right. They'd split up and get into the houses before curfew, and then after curfew they'd come back out and go to their own homes.
So when you guys first got there, you heard the rumors, and the first thing you did is sit down and talk among all the enlisted men. Correct. Talk about what you're not going to do.
There were some junior ranking officers too. They probably wouldn't be happy if I'd said that, but they were involved too. The constitutional loving people were there going, we're not doing this.
And out of your company, you're talking about how many men then?
When it was all said and done, by the time I went to talk to the commander about it, it was more than half the company. It was a large percentage. 2/3 of the company probably were saying we don't want to confiscate.
So others were saying nothing at all, or were they saying?
Others were kind of sitting in the back, seeing how it would all play out, I think.
Right.
Because in the MI field, it's really hard to create waves because you have security clearances.
Right.
So even me talking about this now.
So a lot of guys are worried about security clearances?
Yeah, people worry about that. They're afraid to talk even if things aren't classified,
right, because
they don't want someone to spin it on them.
Gotcha. So they were kind of sitting back and seeing what's going to happen, but at least half of them were very outspoken.
Very well within our group.
Right.
When it came time to talk to people, they would if they were asked, but I'm kind of bullheaded, so I take it head on. I charge into it.
And so they kind of recruited you, volunteered you to be the guy that went up there and be that guy.
And that's been happening since I've been in the military. 10 years. I'm always the guy that gets put in front of the colonel or whoever to tell them our side.
Right. Well, it takes one man to do what's right sometimes. So, but half your company was committed and pretty adamant that they're not going to confiscate firearms.
Correct.
And then you went up to your commander, and your commander's response was, "We're not doing that here. Don't worry about it."
We're not going to be doing that. Don't worry about it. That's not our mission.
Okay. But then you were later on deployed to Louisiana itself, into the city.
Into New Orleans, yes.
I'm sorry, into New Orleans.
That's okay.
That's what I meant. Right.
Yeah. And it was a long bus ride, so again the talks came up. And
right. On the way there.
On the way there, and it's really happening there. What are we going to do?
So you guys knew that in New Orleans proper,
the rumors were
on.
there.
Okay.
And the rumors were it's actually happening.
Right.
And so without actual intelligence, because we weren't collecting it ourselves, we didn't know. It was rumored that it was happening. And so we were nervous once again the whole bus ride. And so we talked and we all decided again, no, if this is the case, we're not going to do it.
And you were there as part of the entire National Guard of Utah.
From Utah,
right?
Mm-hmm. There was a bunch of us.
Right.
When we got to New Orleans, we actually took up the entire rec facility of the university that we stayed on.
Right.
The gym, the offices.
Which university was that?
Loyola of New Orleans, I think is what it's called. Loyola University. So we took up a large place there, and a lot of guys, and even some of the guys from the other units, not just the MI, were kind of hearing what we were talking about and going, I'm on board with that too.
You're not going to do this.
Yeah, we're not doing that either.
So you went back to your commander again?
Well, we had a formation, and they were trying to dispel rumors, and they said, we know there's a rumor of martial law and weapons confiscation. We're not involved in that. That's not our mission, so don't worry. And I'm a loudmouth, and we were not in a formal setting, so I said, doesn't matter if we're allowed or not, that's wrong. And people need to know that. I was asked by my commander to come and speak with him offline, away from everyone.
Doesn't matter whether we're involved or not?
Yeah. My point was, it's wrong. Right. We shouldn't be doing this. I don't care who's doing it. As members of the military, that's not what we should be doing. Show me in the Constitution where it says we do that. So I stepped offline with a couple of the guys that were in the group, of the original group, and I talked with the commander and told him, sir, if it comes to that point and we're asked by other groups to go and help them, we will not do it. And if that's what it comes to, you can send me home now, because I won't do it. He said, don't worry, we'll never ask you to do it. I said, that's not just me. We're talking the majority of this task force that's here all feel the same way. I'm just the only loudmouth willing to say it.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the other elements, the other units within the Utah Guard that were there, they had already been discussing among themselves? Or is this something that spread from your unit? Is it all your fault?
I don't think it was all my fault. I think I was just the loudest person.
Right.
I always am. But I do think, because it wasn't like they just came into the conversation and went, oh, hey, that sounds good. It seemed to me that they had been maybe discussing it a little bit.
Right.
And when they heard me using my loud voice indoors saying, I won't do it and neither should you, they kind of came in and said, yeah, we feel the same way and we've kind of been discussing that too. What would we do? But if you guys are on board, we're behind you.
So now what did the commander say as far as how he's going to communicate this to the big army or everybody else?
He kind of, being in his position, I can see where it would be difficult, but he said, you know, because Big Army was there, he
82nd Airborne was there.
82nd was there in the French Quarter. He says, you know, Big Army, and when he said Big Army, I kind of perked up and went, whoa, why? Why are they even here? And we'd heard reports that they were going to be there, but we thought, why are we using active duty soldiers here? That's not their job. They only know one thing. And so we
your perspective was this is the job of the National Guard.
This is the job of the National Guard. That's you know, and it was a volunteer mission. And I remember telling my employer at the time, this is what I joined up to do. I joined up to help my fellow citizens. That's why I went National Guard and not active duty. I would have loved to have seen the world and been somewhere every 3 years. I joined up the National Guard because that's my job, is to go and help my brothers and sisters when there's instances like this. I'd like to, you know, put a challenge out to my fellow service members, first of all. The same challenge that my buddy gave me years ago. Know your Constitution. Know why you put your hand up and said, yes, I will. You need to understand that and what your obligation to that is. If you remember your oath, you solemnly swore to do that. So help you God. Take it seriously.